Great. Well, hello, Rob.
Hello, Ruchi.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, but it looks like it could be a while here as the snow is coming down.
The snow is indeed coming down, but you know what? What a great atmosphere to discuss one of my favorite topics.
And that would be?
Simulations.
All right.
So let's talk about simulations this week. We started our first couple of Rob and Ruchi's talking about the themes of business acumen. We talked about change. I think today, let's dive into something we know as the vehicle, a lot of these themes, which is simulation-based learning.
Okay.
If you could start us off talking about your definition of simulations. What is a simulation in this day and age?
Great question. So when I try to explain it to people who've never seen or heard of or participated in a simulation, and that actually happened to us yesterday. We were on a call with a potential new client who had been using a board game as a simulation, and I started to use the following analogy. To me, a computer-based simulation is very similar to how a pilot learns how to fly a plane. Business simulations are a case study that comes to life that enables business people to learn how to fly a business by understanding and learning by doing, seeing things that they may not ever have the chance to see, the enterprise of a business. How does a business make money? How does a business function between marketing and sales and operations, all the way through how it finances itself? And so, to me, is what a simulation is all about.
And how do they learn through a simulation? What are they doing?
It depends on the simulation. In our world, as we see it, there are three different types of simulations. There are enterprise simulations where somebody is running an enterprise. I'm running the largest consumer packaged goods company in the world, or I'm running a pharmaceutical company, and I'm seeing the enterprise and I'm understanding the levers across the enterprise that I pull so I understand how it works and how it makes money. The second sort of simulation in our world is what we call best practice simulations, where you are learning about a best practice. For example, coaching. There are several wonderful coaching models out there. The one I particularly like the best these days is the GROW model. The GROW model allows you to understand how to give feed forward, how to look at a situation, and then how to help somebody learn to do things better. A best practices simulation allows you to be in a situation, a simulated conversation with an employee. One of our dear friends, Miss Ellen Astor, who is the star of Fundamentals of Business Leadership. In our best practices simulation, you as a participant learn how to give Ellen feedback based upon a situation that you've seen. The third type of simulation is a blended one. That's where an enterprise simulation and a best practices simulation comes together. So you and I were just talking about a delivery we have in a couple of weeks, where we've taken the enterprise of running an aerospace business and how to give coaching, feedback, and developing other leaders, and we've mashed it together through pulling the right levers on the business, but also pulling the right levers on people.
Great. Could you maybe give an example or two of the levers that you can touch in a business simulation?
Sure. Across the enterprise, the levers typically that drive the metrics of performance, which would be things like revenue, profitability, and today, shareholder value. What are the levers? Well, let's talk about revenue. Revenue is the price of your product multiplied by the number of units of product sold or services sold. So you can pull those levers. You can determine what's the price. Do I go high price? Do I go low price? Do I go medium price? You determine, well, how much of that product or service do I think I can sell in which market, to which customers, and you pull those levers. Manufacturing. Well, I forecasted to sell 100 units. Well, I have 10 units in inventory. I better tell manufacturing to build me 90 more units plus a little buffer. And so now I'm pulling the levers of manufacturing. But then there's the supply chain, the raw materials, the distribution. There's people. there's marketing, and then of course there's the finance. How do I capitalize my business? Do I have enough cash to pay the vendors? Do I have enough cash to pay my employees? So those are the levers.
So it sounds like if you're engaged in a simulation, you have to be able to think in two ways. One is strategically, so you're aligning all of your actions to a grander plan. And two is tactically, you have to be able to understand what exactly you need to touch and execute in order to move the business forward.
Absolutely, and that's the beauty of simulation. It's a tool that allows you at the same moment in time to think strategically. What's my value proposition that I'm offering to customers? How am I going to deliver that value proposition? And then tactically, what does that value proposition look like in terms of the things that I do to get there?
Absolutely.
Such as setting the price or the marketing or some of the other things I just talked about.
That's great. So when you think about your potential audience for a business simulation or a best practices simulation, who are simulations best suited for? What kind of audience?
Is the $65 billion question. Because right now the global training and development marketplace is a $65 billion business. In my opinion, simulations can be used by anyone anywhere who's working for an organization, whether it's a publicly traded organization, a private organization, even not-for-profit organizations. I just ran a program a couple of weekends ago for students who are not-for-profit students at the University of Pennsylvania, and they were learning about how their decisions and how their goals and objectives are driven through the simulation.
Interesting. So I love that program reference, the NPL program at the University of Pennsylvania. It shows you that in order to do a business simulation, you don't have to necessarily be steeped in business beforehand. It could be a really great educational tool as well in which to learn new concepts.
Absolutely, and the goal of that particular simulation isn't to create wealth in terms of money, but to create wealth in terms of other metrics that people don't think about. Health of a population, for example. The motivation of people to seek out employment, the motivation of people to create capital for the entire ecosystem to function. Totally different than the work we would do with a pharmaceutical company or a chemical company or a technology company who's really kind of driven around total shareholder return, which is great, but it's certainly just a different application.
Interesting. So when you think about the needs you're hearing from potential buyers, from people we've delivered to, what are some common themes that make you think simulation's the right thing for you?
I think the biggest theme that we hear is we don't have enough time to learn by sitting in a classroom. I'm not going to give somebody a book. I know crappy e-learning doesn't work. What do you have that can build a skill, an observable behavioral change in a day? And simulations are fantastic at that.
Great. And it sounds like an amazing proposition for someone to be able to engage with something digitally and learn something they've never known before without having to be a passive participant.
So, for example, we have been running a business acumen for drug developers at one of our pharmaceutical clients. In the morning, when they come in, these are some of the smartest people in the world curing cancer. But they really have had no exposure to the profit and loss statement, the balance sheet, where their decisions in running their department to develop the drugs that will cure cancer actually come from. In one day, from 8:30 in the morning until 5:30 in the afternoon, they learn about the system of business. They learn about their place in the system of business, and they understand how to make the best decisions that not only achieve their goals and objectives, but supports the entire organization in one day, 8 hours of learning.
And so what kind of feedback do we hear from people who engage in the simulations or people who ask for us to put on a simulation for a given audience?
Good question. Measurement and feedback is a tricky thing. We have done studies, paid studies, called return on investment analysis in training, where we've actually watched and tracked people throughout their daily, monthly, quarterly jobs to see different decisions they're making relative to the competencies in the simulation that they've gone through. And that's been very positive. I mean, we can illustrate hundreds of percentage points in return on investment. However, that's far and few between. We've done maybe 3 or 4 ROI studies. Typically, we have what we call the smile sheets. You know, did you like it? Does it mean something to you? Are you going to use this? And inevitably, the scores are very, very high on that. And then, of course, there's the communities of learning that we've created, where we hear constant feedback. I personally have more than 5,000 connections on my LinkedIn. 4,000 of those are former participants who read our blogs, who look at the Rob and Ruchi show, who are always sharing with us the importance of the content we've given them and given us great feedback in terms of, hey, Rob, I was thinking the other day about that scenario in the simulation, and I actually used it. So that's, to me, the most rewarding part.
Well, that's incredible, and hopefully we'll have a lot more feedback like that the more simulations we do. If you have any questions about simulation-based learning or want to find out more about our simulations, please comment below and reach out. Thanks for joining us this week, guys.
Thanks, Ruchi.
Thanks, Rob.